mountains, all in, gone away. I had to follow the moonlight, falling against the ocean. With similar sounds to mention, I went for one to go by. I had to give in to no one, crooked smiles are broken.
Sam Prekop is a gifted musician, photographer, painter, songwriter, and singer based in Chicago, Illinois. Since 1994, Sam has been the voice of and mind behind the Songs of the Sea and Cake, an excellent and influential band that has long featured musical contributions by Archer Pruitt and John McIntyre, and after the recent departure of original bassist Eric Claridge, now includes McIntyre's Tortoise bandmate Doug McCombs. On May 11th, 2018, Thrill Jockey Records released Any Day, the gorgeous 11th album by the Sea and Cake, and ahead of some upcoming tour dates, Sam and I reconnected for a talk about the membership and geographic shifts within his band, his unique approach to singing and writing lyrics, how a band processes time after almost 25 years together, the current state of America and its impact on him artistically, and much, much more. With the support of listeners like you who subscribe to this podcast, spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly pledges at patreon.com/creativecontrol, plus in-kind support from CFRU 93.3 FM, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 442nd episode of Creative Control, featuring the brilliant Sam Prekop of the Sea and Cake, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, good.
It's nice to speak with you again. Where in the world are you?
I'm in Chicago.
Chicago, Illinois. That's one of my favorite cities. How long have you been in Chicago?
My whole life, basically. I wasn't born here, but I've lived here since I was 5, I guess. About.
Okay, where were you born?
London.
London, Ontario?
England.
Oh, sorry. We have a London here, so
I know.
It's always very confusing.
I should have clarified.
No, I'm just joking. I didn't realize you were born in London. Your family came to America for any particular reason that you can recall?
So they're not English. They were in school, actually. My dad was on a Fulbright in art school at the time, actually.
Oh, okay. So they're American.
So I'm not English, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I there's something new right away. I did not know that. Okay. And Chicago's cool? Everything's good in Chicago?
Yeah. It's great. It's been beautiful here lately. In fact, just earlier today, I'm like, wow, really, really great, excellent weather, beautiful sky. Everything's great.
Yeah, well, it's because the climate is changing. I think
I know. Unfortunately, there is that dark side to it.
There's a pro and con to the unseasonably nice weather. Yes, it's true. Well,
exactly.
I appreciate this time today because I think the last time you and I spoke was when Runner came out in 2012. Is that that's probably right? You maybe don't
probably
know.
Right.
Yeah, probably right. And it seems to me there's been some quite significant changes in the Sea and Cake since we last spoke. Correct me if I'm wrong, but can you speak to that? Is the band feels different, doesn't it?
It does. Well, a longtime member, Eric Claridge, did not participate in this record, although he's not been in the band for quite a while. So, and we've been working with Doug McCombs on bass, who toured a lot with us for the Runner record as well. So it's new to the public, but he's been with us for quite a while, anyways. But yeah, so we wrote it as a 3-piece, and that changed it up quite a bit. And also, John McIntyre moved to California, so a lot of the record was worked on he was in LA at the time, but now he's since moved to outside of San Francisco. He's setting up a studio in Nevada City, California, which is a couple of hours east of San Francisco.
I did not know this. The last time I talked to John, he was still
Yeah.
in Chicago. Do you know what prompted that?
It's been sort of a long time goal of his. I mean, he's been going to Nevada City over the past, for quite a while just to visit and vacation and stuff. And I guess he's just become, smitten with the town basically. And I think it seemed really sudden to all of us in a way. One minute he didn't say I'm thinking about it. He's like, I'm leaving tomorrow kind of thing. So we're
Wow.
like, what the? Yeah. But John Cam is quite an enigma in general, I have to say. So none of us were actually surprised that this is how it would go, kind of. But he's really into it, and we actually went by. So in June, I guess we were out in California playing shows, and we were able to visit his house, and it's amazing and beautiful, the whole thing. So
Okay.
he
Well,
was just barely beginning to build the studio, and I think now at this point it's almost, if not up and running, really close, I think.
I don't mean to have you speak on behalf of John and his life and professional decisions, but
Yeah,
what can you speak to this? Just because this is news to me, what does this mean for Soma in Chicago? His studio in Chicago, is it just sort of
it's gone.
done?
Yeah,
Wow,
done.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and so he's starting up
And so now it's Soma West Coast, basically.
Soma West Coast. Okay. Wow.
Right.
So that is a fair so I didn't even know about that part. I was aware that Eric had departed. So that is
Right.
that's a fair amount of tumult, if I might say. If I might use that word, which I don't often use out loud, so it felt uncomfortable to say it. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Tumult. Yes. Anyway,
Right, right.
something's do you feel this? There's a seismic shift in the Sea and Cake?
Well, it felt pretty gradual from my perspective. I mean, like I was saying, Eric, he quit or decided he couldn't play any longer right before we were going to go on tour for Runner. So that was quite a while ago. So it's been in our mind that won't be playing with us for quite a while. Now, to actually make a record, which I wasn't sure was going to happen, if we would make one without him or not, or if I felt like it was going to work or whatever. And then because I've also been heavily involved with my solo work, as this electronic stuff I've been doing and all that stuff, I'm like, I don't know if I'm still up for the Sea and Cake or what's going on. But had kept an open mind. And then once a certain amount of time passed, I just, I asked Arch and John if they were at all interested, and that I would see what happened, start writing some songs and playing guitar and stuff. And they were quite excited and were like, yes, let's do it. It's going to be, amazing. And we were excited by the prospect of actually scared and excited about working as a three-piece in a way. I think we just felt that it would be a shame to, discard our long working relationship if we didn't have to. So that's how we proceeded. And I will say that it was, I think it was more difficult than any of us anticipated in a way. I mean, it was sort of a weird record because a lot of it was worked on remotely. I worked on it a lot on my own in my home studio, and John was already out in California. So it was sort of protracted way of working on it. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time in the beginning rehearsing and doing the basic tracks here in Chicago at a different studio, and we were quite excited right up to that point. But then it sort of, with John not entirely settled with his new studio and stuff, the sort of mixing and overdub part seemed to take longer than we would have liked in some ways. I mean, I think it definitely worked out in the end, but it was, I'll just say I'm looking forward to the next record
Ah,
where we will attempt to be in the same room for most of it. I think I've decided that I want to write the record and record it, and then that's, it's done, finished. And that's going to, instead of really stretching it out and go, and I think that will make for a different kind of record anyway, so I'm excited.
do you mean there'd just be less fussing over things?
A bit, yeah. I mean, I feel like for me, the vocals take the longest and is definitely the most work. And I just feel like, so because I'm always writing after the music in a way, and I feel like it could be nice to work on them simultaneously and just, not over labor them or something, or just have it more upfront. And so basically my idea is to come up with some songs and have the words ready and just sing it in the studio with the band. Not like a live recording, but just less protracted in that way.
Okay. I want to follow up on that in a moment, just in terms of your lyric writing on this record, because I feel like there's some stuff going on in terms of what you just addressed, and then in terms of what I'm trying to pick up on with some of these lyrical abstractions and I think some of the more direct aspects of them. But I do think it's probably worth speaking about how Eric's departure, and I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that John McIntyre kind of stepped into the bass playing role for the record. First of all, is that accurate?
He did play a lot of the bass, yeah. Archer actually played on a handful of songs as well. The thing with John is he's actually played bass in the past on some Sea and Cake songs. So the song Weekend is sort of a bass line that John actually wrote and played on cue. So I think that was a cue, like, okay, yeah, John.
Oh, okay.
He could be up for this task, and he's done other ones too, like, the names are totally escaping.
Well, no, just...
And Echo In is another one. I think he wrote the bass on that. Yeah, we felt like he was up for it, and he felt like he could do it. Now, it didn't work on everything, and that was not a surprise. It's sort of not. I guess one thing we did learn, though, is that there's a reason people focus on bass. There's enough to master on that instrument, of course. So it's hard to just. I think in some ways we're mistaken to think that you could just step in on bass and it not pose any issues in a way or whatever. So,
well, just because it's a foundational instrument. You said master, and my mind went two ways. One, mastery of an instrument, but then I also thought about mastering for some reason.
Right.
When you say that you were surprised by the role of the bass, just as I was saying, it is a foundational aspect of any...
Yeah, I think just to be confronted with not having someone who is solely focused on the bass presented itself. So I think we were like, I have a feeling, you'd have to ask John, but I have a feeling that we didn't expect it to be such a hurdle when we started. And on some songs it wasn't, they don't need, bass lines. I will say a lot of the bass lines on this record are definitely more in a support role and that was one of Eric's great breakthroughs or facilities, was almost playing the bass as if it was like a lead melodic instrument in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and so we all definitely felt Eric was a completely great bass player and very unique in every way. But we couldn't make him play anymore, so we had to move on to the next thing.
Is there, I gather, a kind of open-ended tone to your discussion about Eric's role in the band? Like you kind of said he left, but that you also said something like he wasn't going to play for this record and this tour. Like, do you expect that he may return at some point?
I would highly doubt it. He had to quit because of a physical ailment, so he can no longer physically play.
Oh, that's sad.
The bass. Oh. He had developed like a carpal tunnel of his fretting hand, basically.
Oh no!
And he was able to sort of pull it off. For years it had been bothering him, and so it had been a struggle. I don't think any of us realized exactly how bad it was, and I think he just decided he couldn't actually do it anymore. I think maybe he could have participated a bit on the record or whatever, but it's sort of, it has to be all or nothing kind of, I think, to really do it.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. So yeah, that's why he couldn't play any longer, basically.
That's really sad. Frankly, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, my understanding is that with Eric's departure and your work as a three-piece on this record, Any Day, which is a beautiful, beautiful record. I don't think I got to say that before, but
thank you.
Yeah, it's very lovely, and it captivates me, like I said earlier. And again, I don't mean to defer, but we will talk about some of these lyrics in a moment. But in terms of the music, with Eric's departure, with everyone else sort of trying to step in, do you feel like the band's sound changed? It seems to be more guitar-oriented, perhaps a little less synthesized on some level. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it was our intention necessarily up front. I'm a real proponent of following the work, and sort of paying attention to what direction the sort of material wants to take you, sort of. So yeah, for me, it sounds very guitar centric and very vocal centric as well. I mean, I think in some ways I was perhaps overcompensating for the lack of synthesizers and all the sort of extra stuff that we like to do.
Sorry, do you mean as a vocalist you were overcompensating?
Well, I think I just sang more than I normally would. I mean, I feel like I sang all over everything, perhaps to its detriment in some ways. But that's what the material was saying. You should sing as much as possible all over the stuff. I think it was partially because I was left with so much time because things kept getting moved back further. And I'm like, well, I think I could, get these vocals to work better in the song. And I would get them to a point where on previous records I would have stopped there. On this record, I'm like, well, I think I can, take it to the next level, perhaps, or whatever. So that's it's the result of having more time in a good way and maybe not in the best way. It depends on how you look at it.
Was there any other aspect of your sort of life circumstance that impacted your approach to singing? I talk about this on the show sometimes. I'm not a singer by any measure, but I do sing to my kids and stuff. And since my kids have been around, I've been singing a lot more, and I have sing them to sleep and stuff like that. And so as a result, I've kind of learned about my singing voice, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could kind of try to do that. And I mean, obviously I can't do everything, but that's just a thing that's occurred over the last 7 years. Has anything happened in your life that's altered your approach to being a singer?
A good question. I never think of myself as a singer. First I never say, oh, I'm a singer songwriter. I guess I usually, I'm a musician. So anyway, but singer is not what I think of first when I think of what I do, which is kind of odd, I guess. And I enjoy it once I get over a certain threshold. I mean, it's definitely the most difficult thing that I do of all of my pursuits, I would say. And therefore the most rewarding in a perverse sort of way when I feel like I've pulled it off in a way. It's not something I do for fun ever, which is kind of interesting as well. Like, I don't actually sit around and I only sing when I have to, which is kind of weird, I think, as well.
You don't sing along to the radio or the stereo?
No, not really. I'm not like I say, I don't just sing for kicks, really, which is kind of that's in a way. I mean, I think
it's fascinating. You have a very distinctive voice and a distinctive approach to singing.
Right, and I think that's because I'm not a singer, really. I'm a person who does it a lot and has done it for a really long time in a very singular sort of way, and as a result, it doesn't sound like much else. I don't think.
Are you ever approached to sing on other people's records, like in recent years?
I have on occasion, not too often. I can. So I sang on a Broken Social Scene song.
Yeah.
I did that. I sang on a Prefuse 73 track. That was a really long time ago.
Yeah, that was in the 90s, maybe? I can't recall.
It may have been, yeah.
Yeah.
And also like a Rebecca Gates song. So a handful of things I've done. A couple other things. Some Jim O'Rourke track, I think, and
so
not a lot.
Not a lot. Okay.
I'm approached, I think, more often by people, but it hasn't it doesn't always work out or whatever. I don't know.
But that must be a testament. I know you're expressing some self-consciousness about your singing, but the fact that external to your own project, like external requests come in every once in a while, that must speak to something. Your voice is speaking to people.
Yeah, no, I recognize that I have, a pretty unique sounding voice and approach to singing and stuff. So I'm not, yeah, I'm not saying that I'm terrible at it.
No, no.
I'm
Okay.
not a bad singer really. Um, but it's true. It wouldn't, people often think that I'm sort of hanging out and playing with a lot of people in Chicago and stuff. And, um, that's the melting pot of musicians, cross breeding on new material and stuff. And
Right.
I'm always like, unless I'm leading the situation, I can't play anybody else's music or sing on it. Really, it has to be my thing. That's just how I am. It's not by choice. It's just, because I'm not actually, I don't read music, and I think what I know how to do is so specific to my own work that if you want that, it could work. Otherwise, that's what you're going to get, whether you like it or not.
Right.
So.
Okay. So it's a very personal expression you're singing.
Right. And it's not necessarily by choice, but it's how I've worked for such a long time. And that's the result, of being solely focused in this way, I think.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate what you're saying. This brings me back finally to your approach to songwriting and lyric writing, because
Right.
there are moments on this record where I feel like I'm not sure what's happening, which I think is good. I'm not
Right.
I'm not complaining. I just but I am curious about certain aspects of your approach to songwriting on this record and how that might compare to previous approaches, because there's the title track here. Something tells me you're not missing my, call it ordinary conditions starting. Yeah. I can't help it where I'm going to I'm the closer, start off visions favored like an old time. This is, to me, it sounds like automatic writing. It sounds like just language experimentation, like nothing particular. Like I get what's going on some level, but it feels incoherent at the same time. And I'm just curious.
Right.
That comes up quite a bit, I think, on this record, where I feel like I'm in a scene with the song. I can kind of
Right.
get a sense of place, but it's very woozy and strange. Is this a departure for you in some way?
I think the results are different than in the past somewhat. My approach is not changed, I don't think. However, it's so the foundations of how I get to those words and how they make sense to me musically and lyrically, I don't think that has changed so much, but what has come out this time does feel a bit different, denser. And I mean, I think it's also the result. There's just a lot more singing, basically.
Does the singing dictate the lyrical motifs, though?
It really happens hand in hand. I mean, so it's rare where I'm like, I really need to use these words in this song. Sort of each one I find, and it's very intuitive, like what feels right to that particular song, and then I'll feed off of that. What's sort of interesting about what I've happened upon. So yeah, it is quite abstract and off the cuff and nonsense as well. But I feel like when they work, they resonate beyond any of my sort of direct intention, and I find that quite interesting. Sort of subconscious display of anything and everything in a way.
I mean, I presume you are subscribing to the notion that such material, such words are open to the listener's interpretation for the most part.
Yeah, that's complete. That's fine with me, and I assume that's what would have to be happening. I mean, the way I hear it is sort of quite malleable as well. And as I sing the songs live, I sort of recognize some things I might like, not like about certain aspects of the lyrics after having lived with them for a while. The songs change for me as well. In retrospect, this record is it has a darker tone lyrically than in the past, I think, or more melancholic, and I think it's just, it's sort of a middle-aged record. I think, laments of a long working artist type, in a way. But there's also, a lot of joy in there as well too. So it's a mixed bag.
Okay, so we've touched upon this notion that for you the songs are malleable, they're open to interpretation, they are a little off the cuff, there's some abstraction here. But if you step back and look at it, as you've been playing these songs now for quite some time and singing them, and they've altered a little bit, like, do you have a perspective on maybe an underlying or even overarching meaning or intent going on within the lyrics, at least?
I mean, I'd say the general arc is they are like sad songs in a way. Not entirely, and I'm not, and I hope they don't come off as like, I mean, I think it's just sort of, to me, they sound like the struggles of someone working in this realm for a really long time, basically.
Is it your struggle? Because and I know, there are literary and lyrical devices at play here, but you employ the first person pronoun I a lot. I almost on virtually every song. I know these are your songs, and I know that they are the end result of a personal expression. You're feeling these struggles, I assume.
Right.
So this is some.
But I don't feel like it needs to be. I think it's implied rather than explicit, which is fine with me. I also don't want to, shut them down with overreaching sort of meaning like that, basically. I think they would be less interesting if they were really directly about, my frustrations as an artist right now, basically. So that's not my intent, but I sense that's what's coming through.
What about, I don't mean to hit this point too hard, but with Eric forced out of music, forced out of an artistic expression, does that impact you as a writer?
It may be. I can't say it has directly. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I mean, now that you mention it, I suppose, in a way, he could be thought of as a casualty of this, the long, drawn-out career, not quite going anywhere in a sense or something.
Yeah, I just wonder if that finite. That's when you reach that middle age. When you reach middle age, I think you and your friends reach middle age, your contemporaries and your collaborators, stuff starts to happen physiologically, and we laugh it off. Oh, I'm getting old, but it can actually have these devastating impacts and effects, and it's time. It's just time rearing its head. And
I think that's quite perceptive on your part. I mean, in a way, it's the record that we've made, I don't know if it's our 10th record or whatever. So it's also defiant in a way, like, okay, here's another record of exactly what we want to do kind of thing. And we obviously don't care what most people think in a way, so it's sort of, I think it's, in a way, our career has been a triumph. In another way, is that, I've been able to do exactly what I want for a really long time, and people are still interested in what we're doing. And so I definitely don't want to be complaining or whining at all.
No, it doesn't come across that way. In fact, like you say, there are darker themes to this record. We've touched upon some possible ideas, but the music is generally rather upbeat, sort of propulsive, pop-oriented, guitar rock-oriented. Like it's mostly quite an upbeat record musically.
Right.
So I think that kind of offsets, and your singing is similarly. It's not downcast. It's quite expressive. The phrasing is quite. Right. It's like active phrasing as well. Like you're adding things here and there, little flourishes. Like it seems like a very engaged. Yeah. I just want people who haven't heard it yet or are about to listen to it to not get the impression it's a downer.
Right. No. Yeah. Definitely not.
Yeah, it's the opposite of that. So and I assume that that's an organic thing that occurred. Like the music. Sorry, did you say the music came first and then you kind of applied ideas and vocals?
So I usually write the music without thinking too much about what the singing is going to be. So, and that's sort of an odd approach that we've used forever, basically. So I kind of come up with the music stuff and then fit the singing to it after the fact, kind of. And that's hasn't changed on this record.
Yeah.
And I think it makes for more interesting music because I think there's just things you wouldn't do if you were worried about, supporting the vocals, basically. And so that's always been my ideas. Now, however, when I'm writing songs, at this point, I can use, I can feel intuitively if this kind of work is going to, end up working out or if it will be completely impossible for me to deal with later. Now, that has happened and I've had to make, so like I Cover the Mountain, the original takes for that were completely different. It was sort of like 3 songs buttered up at once, and I'm like, okay, this is not happening. And so in post, I re-edited everything, took out most of the parts and changed the sound of the guitars, and it became a radically different song when I faced having to sing on it. And then there's other songs like These Falling Arms, which even though I didn't sing while we were writing it, but that song was just Archer and I sitting around and playing around, and I'm almost sure I was probably humming along. What it sort of wrote itself instantly, and you could it's set up to be like a vocal song, kind of.
I see.
So.
Yeah, I want to ask about that song just because the expression kind of compels me to ask about it. I had to cover the mountain on and gone away. I had to follow the moonlight falling against the ocean. Cover the mountain. Is that an expression that you picked up somewhere, or I just haven't?
I don't think so. I think I just, it just showed up to me. Those are like my that's my favorite couplet, I think.
It's an interesting one. It's elemental, but I don't quite understand. What does cover the mountain mean to you?
I think I just meant, like climbing to the top of it kind of thing, basically.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like to not say, it's sort of like, yeah, to my mind, it's something sort of like that, climb the top of the mountain sort of thing.
Okay.
But I prefer the idea of cover, because it could be referring back to the, like cloud cover or something like that. I don't know. It's sort of, those are my favorite kinds of lyrics where, they seem absolutely elemental. And it's almost like the name of the band, The Sea and Cake. It's sort of, why is that odder than it should be? It's just two very, certainly not exceptional words, but it's just in the way they're put together. And that the meaning is always in flux. And it's those kinds of lines I'm really interested in. And sort of, I Cover the Mountain is along those lines, I think.
If you think about your practice as a lyric writer, is it other songwriters that maybe influence you? You seem to me to be, just based on your lyric writing, I've always thought of you as kind of maybe an active reader. I don't want to sound academic or snobby about that, but I just think that you have a relationship with language, maybe poetry even, that suggests that you have consumed a lot of language in some capacity, and I'm just curious if you can speak to that.
I have to admit, I have not, actually.
Just watch a lot of TV? What do? You go to the movies?
So I'm always working. I don't even go to movies. So I used to paint all the time. That was my big thing. And now I do a lot of photo stuff and or music. If I have a choice, I'm doing any one of those things at all times, basically. So I'm not a great reader. I certainly read, but the other interesting thing is I almost never pay attention to anyone else's lyrics. It's like when I'm listening to music, the lyrics almost don't matter to me most of the time.
Really fascinating. Like I employed
which is pretty weird. I don't know if I've ever said that, and now that you mention it, I think it's just something I'm realizing now. It's like the lyrics I almost can never I doubt that I could recite anybody's lyrics. I mean, I can barely recite my own, really.
What do you suppose that says about you?
I'm not sure. I don't know. It's sort of odd. I'm not saying, I guess I notice bad lyrics much sooner and quicker than really good ones in a way.
But there's a lyrical structure here that sort of suggests that I don't. It doesn't seem to me on this record in particular, but in general, if I can speak generally of your work, like I don't hear like a father to the style of what you're up to, but there does seem to be a certain recognition of the economy of language, the way things can be structured, and there's kind of an open-ended appreciation of that. And
Right.
I can't help but wonder if that comes from somewhere, but it sounds like by your own estimation, it's just the way you write. It doesn't necessarily, it's not derived from any one or any other kind of practice.
Yeah, I mean, I admit like language and writing is not something I've really studied. I mean, I've always been more focused on visual art, basically.
That's interesting because there's a vividness to your writing on this record in particular, too. Like I said earlier, I feel like I'm in a scene trying to make out what's going on in every song.
Right.
And I think that speaks to the visual aspect of your use of language, frankly.
It could be. I don't know. It's not something I would prescribe, like I need to sort of get at what I'm interested in visually with these words, really. I mean, I hope that for me, the best thing that can happen is that it feels utterly natural and that I couldn't do anything else. That's like the highest praise in my mind. It's sort of, this is the essence of how I work, and this is what it sounds like.
Sam, are you beginning to get concerned that I'm working on some kind of master's thesis about the Sea and Cake?
Yeah, this is pretty hardcore.
I didn't plan, had no plans or notes.
Right.
I didn't plan to take us down this road, and I apologize if it's getting a little too whatever. But
No, it's fine. It's been quite interesting.
it's kind of fascinating to me about just the way you set up scenes. Like it's got a cinematic. I hate when people say this kind of thing, but there is this sort of cinematic aspect to what's going on. Like I do feel like I'm in off-kilter scenarios with each song, and I feel like you are as the writer. Like there's just you're painting portraits or setting scenes in a strange way, and it just makes me want to figure it out. But maybe not everything needs to be figured out, I guess, is where I'm landing.
Yeah, I'm definitely a proponent of don't have to figure everything out.
Okay. Well, mission
I
accomplished.
mean, I think it just boils down to what is interesting to listen to and what works. And the whole visual thing, it's not something I would set out to do, but I assume and hope that it's probably happening. I mean, it does for me, that sort of conjures certain scenes or visualizations in a way, and I think that's completely fine and seems to make sense if you work in sort of non-linear language and stuff like that, sort of allow abstractions to exist within songs and stuff.
Well, we've talked about your personal feelings, maybe about being an artist. We've talked about whether or not Eric's situation has maybe impacted you as a writer. What about just sort of general universal world stuff? This time, this era.
Right.
I'm just curious, do you feel like that's coming in here? I feel like there's allusions to dishonesty and strangeness in terms of people's relationship with information. I feel like that kind of comes up here and there. Like, do you feel like you were anything about the current state of affairs, so to speak? Has that informed you as a writer?
I think so. It's definitely in the air. I mean, this Trump era has been quite distressing for me in a weird way. I've never been, intensely politically active, but I really resent Trump on every level. And one of the main things is that he's been so utterly distracting in every aspect of everybody's life, and I really resent that.
Yeah.
That I feel like I'm having a hard time working lately because, I mean, this midterm thing has been all consuming, and I really have not been able to concentrate on anything besides it. And I hate him for it. That's a big part of it. But
Yeah.
I'm ultimately an optimist, and I feel like there's no way he can drag the entire world down, for that matter, in a way. So I'm optimistically hopeful that things are going to change here soon.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But yeah, it's been a profound distraction in my life, definitely.
I didn't mean to go too heavy-handed, but I do feel and hear some of that anxiety and frustration in like a song like These Falling Arms, where you say, how, why, when truth comes, how can we keep on getting
Yeah,
by?
I think that is definitely my Trump rant, veiled perhaps, but it's definitely in there. That
All
frustration and
all of a sudden, revisions are going by, is what you say.
right.
And I feel
Mhm.
like that speaks to this era. Anyway, I do appreciate, again, I didn't mean to make this some kind of academic study of the record on some level, but it speaks to me on a few different levels, and I enjoy the artfulness of it and the kind of indirect and direct aspects of what you've done here. So you mentioned that you can't wait to work on the next Sea and Cake record. Is that something that's churning within you already? Like, do you have a sense of where it's going to go and when it's going to happen?
I mean, there's no dates set really, and it's pretty much up to me, like I have to start it, basically, that's how it goes. But in a way, like I was mentioning earlier, I want to set it up so that, that's not spread out over a year kind of thing. I want to just sort of prepare as a band beforehand, make the record, and finish it sort of all together. And I think that will make for a different, at least feeling record, sort of. We really enjoy playing together, and I lament the fact that we don't as much as we used to. Of course, that's another, you know, the band's getting older. And now that John lives in California, and but I think we could take advantage of having to, make a plan to be in the same place for a certain amount of time.
Is it
Um,
obvious or fair to say that with Eric's departure, John moving on, moving from Chicago, there's a certain amount of urgency now in terms of your approach to the Sea and Cake? Like, you kind of have been rocked with this notion that it can't just happen anytime it wants to
right,
anymore. Like, you kind of have to seize it. You have to kind of make it happen more than
right.
maybe you used to.
I mean, what's so affirming of our longevity and sort of playing together is when we do get together to play like the shows and stuff. It's sort of, and I feel like we've never. I don't want to make a live record, but there's a essence of when we're actually playing on a stage or rehearsing, whatever. I don't think you could get to any other way besides playing together for
Yeah.
over 20 years. And I just feel like if we could take advantage of that further in a more direct way, that I think that will make a really good record, which we haven't. I don't feel like we've done yet. Some of the earliest Sea and Cake records were definitely more along those lines, like the Biz. I don't know if you're familiar with the old ones, but
Yeah.
they have a certain sort of immediate urgency to them, and I don't know why we had all the time in the world, in a way, but it's sort of just what you do when you're in a band. You write songs, record them, put out the record. So I think some of that is missing after having been active for so long.
Yeah, and you guys are all
But
older.
when we get back together, to play shows and do these tours, I mean, we're going to Japan tomorrow actually to play, and I had Archer and Doug over here last night rehearsing, and I was struck by how immediate it is to just sit around and play some guitars or whatever.
Yeah.
I think of that because I often work on my own on this electronic stuff, which is really unrelated to the band. Musically, they're somewhat related, but sort of how I go at it and what role I play with it is completely different. And so, and I can get to a point where it's like, oh yeah, I don't need the Sea and Cake anymore. I can just do all this other stuff. But then I recognize the certain unattainable quality that you can't get any other way. unless you've been playing with these people for 20 years or whatever.
Well,
so
it's pretty fortuitous that you have Doug McCombs filling in, so to speak, or joining the band, I would think, just because he's been playing with John for, 2 decades, 2.5 decades,
right.
whatever it's been. So you're pretty lucky there, I would think.
I agree, yeah.
And this solo stuff that you were alluding to, is there, beyond the Sea and Cake plans, are you working on stuff that that might see the light of day, so to speak?
I'm not actively working on anything right now. I sort of work on, I definitely hope to make another electronic record, and it's sort of, I have to admit, I get more excited about that in some ways than like another Sea and Cake record, only because it's the easier path.
Yeah.
to be truly honest, it's like, I really like just messing around in my studio. It's quite arduous in a weird way, and it is really hard to do things completely solo. You definitely realize that you miss the support of the band members, and it helps to not have to make every single decision, kind of, in a way, even though a lot of times in the Sea and Cake it feels like I'm doing that, but in reality I'm not actually. So when I'm faced with that with my solo records, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a pain, a true pain to get through this in a way. But I really just love working on that stuff, and I feel like have a lot more that people should hear, basically. So I feel like I've letting myself down by not putting out more music. So I feel like I should do that as well.
Oh, that's good to hear.
And I've had amazing, so the live thing that I do with the Sims stuff, I've been very excited by how that's been working and how people respond to it and stuff. And I feel like I want to make a record that works on those levels as well. I just think that I realize the records I've made so far can be difficult for people to really get into, but I feel like I could do one that would be easier to like in a certain way, just based on what I do live in a way. And I think I'd be interested for trying something along those lines. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I know that Any Day, the new Sea and Cake record, is out via Thrill Jockey, and people can go to thrilljockey.com to learn more about that. Where would you direct people to learn, who are listening, to learn more about you and the Sea and Cake?
Well, that's a good way to start. I do a lot of stuff on Instagram with my photo stuff, so I've always tell people to check that out. That's become an important sort of creative outlet for me, all this photo stuff.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's at one Sam Pre. So the number 1 and then Sam Pre.
It's a good thing I asked. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah. So check that. And the Sea and Cake has one as well, which is the Sea and Cake. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I usually talk about the music stuff that I'm up to as well. Okay. But it's mainly photo based, but it's if you want to know what I'm doing, I think it's a good way to check in on me, basically.
Nice. That's great. All right. Well, is there a song from Any Day that I can play for people right now? Is there something you can pick for us?
I really like Into Rain, I think.
Why did that come to mind?
The top of my lyric pile here. I think it's a really intricate, it's sort of, I think for me it's impressively intricate phrasing of the vocals, and the sort of the guitar interplay is also pretty interesting. I think I just like it. And it's sort of, it's kind of it's a throwback and a look ahead simultaneously.
All right, well put. Let's play it then. This is Into Rain by the Sea and Cake from their latest record. Sam, thank you so much for this time today, and I wish you the best of luck with everything, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
You're welcome. Thank you.
What am I waiting for? It's not over Seconds past awake and I'm only finding I sort of my shift, I ease I got, and I'm into it. So far so gone, forgive, I know. Appears to be, oh, try to let go all of my affairs. I get alone. All along, what's clear to me, what's taking so we're out of time. If all this can resist, we don't belong here. Appears to be, I'd imagine the fall just over the fence, but running through here. Appears to be, I can never return. Let's leave it alone. Standing closer, cast a moment set aside. Standing by what you see, I got, I still just holding together my falls, remember all the showing. But falling this hard, it leaves a lot, become untangled. I better not solve a favor, still unable. 1,000 years to call my home, but just until the sun is gone, to all of those who feel it's going on. Appears to be, I'd imagine a fall just over the fence, but running through here. Appears to be, I can never return. Let's leave it alone. Standing closer, last a moment set aside, yeah. Calling on you, still above the line. If all I'm in, I fall into ways. I leave it on you, across the miles again. We run a fence, but this is only. How far am I? I'm coming through here. It's all of mine to stand beholding. Appears to be, I'd imagine the fall just over the fence, but running through here.
Very special thanks to Sam Prekop for appearing on the 442nd episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available on all iOS and Android platforms and on things like Spotify, YouTube, and Audio Boom as well. If you're looking for an episode and you can't find it for some reason on any of those platforms, or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my regularly scheduled newsletter, please visit my site, vishkhanna.com. Everything you might want to know about me is pretty much on that site. Well, hopefully. Hopefully you don't want to learn more than what's on that site. That would be strange. vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @VishCreative or @VishKhanna. You can listen to a radio show version of Creative Control on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time around the world at cfru.ca or on an actual radio at 93.3 FM if you're in or near Guelph. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep this podcast going. And for your trouble, and if you're interested, I can send you a t-shirt that I still have some in stock, some t-shirts in stock that bear the name of the show. One of the designs has my face on it in profile. It's a dark maroon thing. Anyway, if you'd like a shirt, let me know. Just message me on Patreon and I'll get right back to you. For their in-kind support of the show, thanks again to Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, Planet Bean Coffee, CFRU 93.3 FM, and Grandad's Donuts. They all really help. Thank you very much. Thanks also to my good pal Jim Guthrie. He lets me use the instrumental version of his song The Rest Is Yet to Come to end this show each and every week. Thank you, Jim. Go to jimguthrie.org for more info about him. And finally, and last but not least, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode and hopefully listening to other episodes, and for subscribing to the podcast and maybe telling your friends about the show if you think they might like the show. That's great. That really helps. So thanks for all the stuff that you do to keep the show going. Speaking of going, I have to go, but I will talk to you very, very soon. Goodbye for now.